any questions for that?
We just set up the situation. You had some questions, didn't you?
Yes, I have some questions that I can ask personally, but so I was gonna do panel 2, focusing on the comparison between different L2 constructions. So I prepared this question. Okay, what is more interesting? Okay, this is very interesting. Do you think peaceful coexistence between different L2 constructions is possible?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you think peaceful coexistence between different types of L2 constructions is possible?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Like, meaning, any specific aim? Is there any different? Is there direct business advantage for each team if you cooperate together? There's like a state channel standardization recently happened, so.
I just want to clarify. So you're talking about different L2 solutions. It seems like you are more talking about like different implementations of the same L2 solution potentially. Different companies that are working on the same sort of similar solutions, or that like I think that there's definitely room for layer 2 for like plasma and for roll up and ZK roll up and.
I meant that.
You meant that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for all of them because I think they tend to fill different roles. For example, plasma is the most scalable. It can do the most transactions per second, but it's harder to do certain types of applications on it than it might be to do on optimistic rollup. Yeah.
I think there's actually this almost very beautiful sort of synergy between all these levels. And in fact, like probably the ultimate pyramid of scalability, the ultimate scalability architecture looks something like sharding at the bottom layer, layer 1, and then on top of that you have optimistic rollup, because optimistic rollup is sort of a pure improvement in terms of state execution on layer 1, which is a sort of pure data availability using sharding. On top of optimistic rollup, you can build plasma, because again, like the plasma verification game can happen on anything that's sort of a fully generalized platform as optimistic rollup is. On top of plasma, in order to get the latency that you want from state channels, you can do state channels on top of that, and then on top of state channels, you can have protocols for sort of multi-hop payments. So I think there's ultimately like all of these are actually sort of like just the ultimate scaling solution. Are all going to work together. One thing I think that a lot of us have found is that it tends to be easy maybe to start from sort of layer 1 and sort of work outward from there, which is why I think optimistic rollup is just sort of like a right now a very sort of like clear optimization is tending to sort of gain some traction.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for some reason like there's this narrative that maybe they can't peacefully coexist despite them being pretty separate strategies in a lot of ways, and I think that's just because it's really hard to build, and we've been working on it for a long time, and none of them has really taken off yet as like a reliable solution for scaling. And so instead we're saying which one's going to be first, we fit them in this race unnecessarily. But these are all great things. I think eventually they're going to be like reliable and we can use them, and eventually once one of them or two of them maybe are reliably usable, maybe we can get them to interoperate. But it probably takes some time because like I mentioned, it's very hard to build all of this stuff.
What was the question? No, I'm joking. Okay, so I definitely agree with Dan on the stack. Like this software is extremely hard to build, but like building this stack, like it's like we forget like the software risk that exists when putting your like funds in layers and layers of abstraction. I think that we should keep it simple. Like so, I'm a fan of the stack. Like, and then we can use like interledger to interoperate all the layer 2s like with each other. But like let's take it one step at a time. Fine with the optimistic rollup, but like honestly, I'm fine like with seeing like a state channel network in production. Like let's get one working, and then we can think about the interoperability. So like, may the best one win, and after like you see it, like maybe we'll think. I would think like only after that, like to like start doing collaborations, weird collaborations.
I guess to answer your question in the first form, which is are different design paradigms for layer 2 scaling, can they cooperate? The answer, as everyone else has said, I think it's definitely yes, in the sense that they have different properties, different use cases. So by building them in layers and cooperatively, then you get improved performance all around. It just cooperation is the best way. In terms of, is there space for, say, multiple groups and projects that are working on the same design pattern? The answer is, I think, still yes, because a lot of these design patterns aren't fully fleshed out in what they're going to look like, what their properties are, what their features are, what their limitations are potentially, and so on. So having multiple teams at this juncture, developing and researching the limits of how far we can push the limits of these different techniques, will eventually lead us to have a much better understanding of what they can do, what they can't do, and then after that start building standards for interoperability.
I think we always looking for the good balance. So I mean, for example, Plasma Group proposed in this year generalized plasma specs. So after that, then Plasma Group proposed the OVM. Yeah, it was great. So yeah, we also implement that, but however, maybe the spec is maybe different now. Yes. But however, for example, we can exchange token. So we need a good balance and many kind of interface for each layer. So yeah, you should try to make standard. So yeah, always we should try, I think.
What do you think, Ben?
I actually have a question. I can pose a question. Just had something on my mind recently. So when I first came into this industry, I thought, okay, hey, we should treat this like a fast-growing startup. It's a crazy space. Let's just get something working in a month. And so I thought, okay, let's get some state channels demo in a month, just the most basic possible thing. And through the course of the past 2 years, I feel like I've been convinced that that is just not an approach that works very well here. And the reason why is that we're not getting standards set and then being able to build upon them. And so this is what's an interesting question, because on one hand we might be slowing down by saying, let's get the absolute basics nailed, set a standard, and let us build on top of it, versus in a month, let's get something shipped and see what happens. But on the other hand, the argument might be we have no idea what's going to take off, and the thing that takes off will set the standard, and so we should just build lots of shit. So I'm curious what your guys' take is on that, because I'm still kind of juggling those two options.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree more, Liam.
How
What's that? Yeah. So it's drama. So I think generally when people have sought out to create a standard, it's failed. And in fact, what turns out is I think Uniswap, wasn't there a standard for multi-app payment, and you just sort of completely ignored it because ultimately these people, it doesn't make sense for this particular thing, right? And so when you try to create a standard when you don't actually have an app that makes sense, you tend to sort of create for the wrong things. And so what actually happens is you just sort of build the standard basically around some particular thing that works. And that's sort of a pattern I think you see over and over in tech, is that it's very hard to sort of design a standard. Now this does end up with sort of tech standards that are kind of inelegant in theory very often. Not that Uniswap is inelegant in any way, but I do think it matters that actually something be built, that an interface basically come after the implementation or come after sort of the application.
I kind of agree to some extent with Dan. I think that one thing that has happened in Ethereum is that people have really rushed to create standards with these EIPs, where you have ERC20, and then you had ERC777 and ERC.
But ERC20 was enormously successful.
ERC20 was enormously successful, but we're up to 2,000 or something now, and there's too many of them. And I think that people really want to rush and sort of force a specific standard. But I think that you need a little bit more competition early on to find what one is the actual best standard, rather than saying, oh, you didn't do the first person to propose a standard, you didn't implement that one, so you're not like playing fair. Like I think that it's you kind of need more competition than that. I think that like it's hard to define like the best standard when we're so early on. And ERC20 it did work out really well, but I think a lot of the other ones, like the meta transaction standard, like might not be the ideal way to do a meta transaction. And so like I don't know if I want to if I were to do meta transactions in a smart contract, I don't know if I would want to implement that standard versus doing my own. What number is it? Yeah, just stuff like that. I don't know. I don't like rushing too. I mean, standards can be incredibly useful, right? I guess maybe there's a balance that needs to be struck.
In all my professional experience, anytime I saw standardization, it has been a premature optimization. I'm not a fan. I want to see one good application just dominate, and the collaboration will just happen. There's literally no reason for the leader to start disclosing everything or try to collaborate. If you have money, why would you try to collaborate? You would only do it for the positive press, or to just have be liked by people because you want to be friends with everyone. But from a strictly competitive perspective, I see no reason why, if I had 10 more million than Liam and I have also a better idea than Liam, why would I even bother to give Liam all this information, basically free, let him catch up to me, while instead I can just push him out of the market, maybe acquire him and just dominate, create a monopoly. I'm confused.
Should be like the debates where you're after that would go
The one thing I'm thinking about with this though is that makes total sense in a startup context where everyone's competing against each other for market share of some kind, but none of us have any business models or any idea how we're going to monetize any of this. So it's more we have a bunch of money from people that are giving us grants or VC funding to work on a specific solution. For example, you mentioned the difference between Uniswap and Plasma Group. You're doing the technology, you're doing the UI and the business side almost of this collaboration. Shouldn't there be standards being set by the Plasma Group side and engineering versus Uniswap doing everything in-house? There's a bit of a difference there where we're not trying to build businesses for the majority of the people building layer 2 systems. There's maybe some edge cases where there's a token involved, but yeah.
That's why I explicitly said, if I have already all the money.
Hence, projects which have ICO, then don't need to bother about this type of collaboration.
Yeah, another hard one. I think one way of looking at it is we're all part of the same organization. It's the Ethereum/DApp organization, and if you look at it as another organization, like the way Amazon operates, every individual team is very explicitly setting an API for every other team. If they were to all try and build Amazon separately, whereas this communicable object, then it would be a disaster. But instead, they set APIs as soon as possible. I think we could probably do the same. For example, we even spent a month earlier this year trying to interoperate, and over the course of that, APIs changed, interfaces changed, and we didn't get a fully working product. And I think that was because we focused on iterating on some demo versus on actually specifying how we're going to continue to cooperate over a long period of time. I could be wrong with that.
I think that maybe some of the issue comes up when okay, I don't have any issue with someone trying to set a standard. I guess maybe my issue is more when people try to force other people to conform to a standard when they don't feel it works for them. Maybe that's really where my beef is. I don't have any issue with someone saying this is the best way to interact in this sort of context. It's more just when it's oh, why aren't you using that standard? You're not playing fair. You should be helping other. That's really where maybe I start to take issue.
Except when BNB and USDT don't correctly implement the ERC20 standard, and you complain about how that breaks their Uniswap contracts, and that's their fault.
Sure. Yeah. But they call themselves ERC20s. That's maybe they say that they're ERC20, but they don't conform to the standard. So I think that's maybe, a different thing.
ERC20 sucks.
I don't know, maybe there's a middle ground here to say that strong standards weekly held or something like this. I think that there's definitely a benefit to having standards generally. We've been very fortunate at Plasma Group as a nonprofit to be able to put out our ideas in spec form and have like multiple teams come and implement them. So Cryptoeconomics Lab is one of them. Matic just put together predicates. So that's been super cool and very exciting. With that being said, along the way, I'm quite positive that that spec that we wrote was not correct. And so I'm happy for every single one of those people to be changing it when they realize that we did a very stupid thing and that there's better ways to do things. But the important thing is that conceptually, because we wrote down the ideas, other people were able to take those ideas and run with them in a very reasonable way. So it seems to me like there's probably a middle ground here where we should definitely be very open and sharing about the ideas that we have and the architectures that we're going to support with them. But if it turns out that those architectures aren't right for other individual use cases, then totally we shouldn't be angry at people for not conforming to them. Maybe ERC20 is bad, but.
I think that due to the culture of the industry, there's actually this incentive to always like push for like sharing all the information. Because if, for example, if you actually have a problem with your spec, you benefit from like from nobody else like looking at it, and you're just presenting it at conferences and like getting more people hyped about it and so on. Because in the long run, this allows you to like keep like a half-baked solution that you have, like via like only you literally, you only understand this thing that you're building. Nobody else cares to look at it because you're an authority in this. Time passes on, like nobody looks at it, and like you keep building and building and building, and like maybe people will not even look at it because it's too expensive for them, literally expensive as in quote unquote, like in time spent. Why would like let's say, why would I look at your spec like for free, while instead I could work on my thing? Like I'm confused as generally in the collaborative sense that if there's a half-baked solution, like for you there's like a complete lack of incentive like to like push like for everybody to understand it. Because you can just like keep fooling people. I'm not saying you're fooling people, I'm saying that you can easily do that. And I would argue that like this was already done like during the inception of Plasma, like 2017. Yeah, what does the audience think?
Disagree.
Okay, Jeff, like come up here. We've done this before. Jeff.
No.
Before Jeff joined us, the 8th panelist, brief point, which is I think the reason that we haven't seen a lot of standardization in the layer 2 space is less because of some willful intent and more that a lot of the layer 2 scaling technologies have very much been in the research phase in terms of their properties, limitations, etc. And because of that, if it's still in research, it's still in flux, it's hard to build a standard around something that doesn't even exist yet. Like we don't even know what it's going to look like. We don't even know what feature we're going to add because it's all in the research phase. So I think it's last that the researchers and developers have like willfully not sought standardization as much as kind of just timing, which is that it hasn't really been the right time to look for standardization. That being said, a lot of the layer 2 scaling techniques have kind of matured over the past couple of years. So in my opinion, we should expect increasing standardization in the space, and we're already seeing this happening in the state channel space.
What you got, Jeff?
All right, so one practical example is worth 1,000 theories. Here's one practical example of why you would want a standard. People are working on state channels. Meanwhile, there's this whole category of things called wallets. So unless your objective is to, as a state channel, become bigger than all wallets, you want something that wallets will implement to be compatible with state channels. Wallets don't want to implement however many different things. They don't want to have to pick a winner. So no matter what your relative differences between two organizations working on state channels, it's significantly to both of your advantage to converge on a standard that you can convince wallets to implement, because that could significantly lessen your costs because you don't have to build the whole entire stack from scratch. You can actually onboard users from existing wallets and take advantage of these huge user bases. Significant advantage to both of you. So essentially, cost sharing, cooperation, Ricardian advantage, non-externalized, shared cooperative resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know what the Ricardian advantage means, but I'm going to start using that for sure.
Big ICO projects have done like wallets.
Sorry, what?
Big ICO projects have done wallets specialized for their layer 2.
I agree.
But no one uses it, yes.
Is it actually to your advantage to use a standardized, commoditized wallet, the state channel standard? Like ultimately, if you actually had the ability to do so as one company, then actually like establishing your weird idiosyncratic interface as the standard is actually like sort of ultimately, this is basically Microsoft's entire business model. This is actually like the sort of the dream for a company. Whereas like standardization, commoditization being like, we are providing a service that literally anybody, any of our competitors will give you exactly the same thing, will put in the exact same slot. It's just a nightmare from a competitive point of view.
Okay, so I just threw that on the end, but recording comparative advantage is literally directly about this. So the people who are familiar with economics will know that the concept of recording comparative advantage basically says that even if you're the best at everything, even if you are the cheese and you're the super company and you're going to take over everything and do everything, there are some things you are even better at than others. And chances are, if you're not an existing wallet company, there's something other than wallets that you are even betterer at than you are at wallets. And recording comparative advantage says, counterintuitively, when you run it out, if you do more of the thing that you're even better at and let the other person do the wallet, it's actually significantly better for yourself. This is like the foundation of international trade, blah, 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 blah. And so it is simply not the case that trying to be a monolith and do everything yourself is actually more profitable. That's just not how any economic model works.
Except for Apple. What?
No, Apple heavily specializes.
Well, Jeffrey, they didn't tell me there's going to be a second panel. I agree that's true that in terms of, and I think one fantastic example of a collaboration between two companies at different layers that have different comparative advantages would be Uniswap and Plasma Group combining to build Unipig together, where, again, this is the case of two companies at different layers, not trying to monopolize the entire stack. But I thought what we're referring to here is companies that are offering basically the same thing, sort of expertise in state channel, sort of state channel libraries, for example. And so the question here is, just from a competitive point of view, what's the advantage to these companies who are, that are competitors for offering essentially the same or replaceable services as each other? So
I was going to say was these are not companies. Again, the same point. These are not companies. It's not business models. These are all grant-given institutions. So they're not trying to compete. They're trying to build something of use.
Yes. Speak for yourself. Yeah.
We're technically a company, but I'm curious if you have any opinions on do you know Coinbase Wallet Link and Wallet Connect? Do you think that it's like a bad move that they're kind of trying to, the whole idea of Wallet Connect was to kind of establish a standard for these wallets, and then Coinbase decided to roll their own with Wallet Link because according to them it didn't really feel like a like Wallet Connect, for whatever reason they felt like it didn't meet their level of standard.
So I think anyone who's familiar with software projects of any kind know that there's a ridiculous amount of bike shedding that goes on amongst people who are like, oh, I slightly disagree with this slight concept, so I'm going to build my own entire library and stack for this. This is 50% ridiculous and 50% critically necessary. So I think you could sum up most of the software industry this way, right? It's 50% ridiculous because, in real life, this one tiny thing that you have an issue with is not actually a good reason to build your own whole stack, and it's wasteful and bad. And if you've never seen an abandoned software library, this is why it happens. Because you had that one little thing that bugged you about that other library, and then you got into it and you're like, oh wow, building and maintaining a whole software library is a lot of work. Now my project is abandoned. How did this happen? So yeah, if you slightly dislike something about something, and so you come up with something that's strictly better in every way, then that's a net win for everyone. Not usually what happens. Usually you end up getting into it and you're like, yeah, I solved that one problem. Oh, there's 6,000 other things I have to do to build a proper user experience. And I think that's, we're talking about wallets. I think that's one of the #1 thing people underestimate about wallets. Wallets are not primarily a theoretical hurdle. Yeah, a couple new theoretical features that we now want to integrate into wallets, but like 95% of the engineering work of wallets is doing boring things that take a ridiculously long amount of time, and then every company is like, no, we're going to start with the one cool feature, and then we'll get to that other stuff later, and then like realize like 6 years, 10 years later, it's like, we had to do a huge amount of work on this thing that no one thinks is theoretically important on, and nobody's writing a paper about, because it's just like basic user experience, and like the amount of research we had to do on like what to set the default fee at was like insane, and we never thought about that when we were originally designing our wallet. And I think just in general in this industry, like we're excited about concepts and we're excited about theoretical breakthroughs, and we underestimate how much of engineering is allowed to be boring. How much is like, okay, you have this one little advantage in this one little area, plus there's approximately like 7 to 8 years of just regular hard work you're gonna have to do with a very large competent team. And so the number one reason that you shouldn't just try to be your own wallet company is it will take you 7 to 8 years if you do it well. So.
Money Legos, they need standards, babies.
I think there's a hand over here.
At this point, we would like to make an intermission for Liam's birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Liam. Happy birthday to you.
Sorry, we wanted to do this for so long.
Questions from the audience?
That song is a very successful standard internationally renowned.
Except on film. Licensing.
What's up, Patrick?
I do have a bit of a comment. So I don't think off-chain protocols are going to be very valuable until there's a network effect. To make it a network effect, you need to have some standard where off-chain protocol 1 can talk to off-chain protocol 2. Now, if we look at the Bitcoin world, they do have standards, these off-chain protocols, and the gold standards. And that's actually been meaningfully successful in the sense that you now have multiple implementations that can talk to each other. But in my view, I don't think off-chain is going to be really valuable until all chains and different blockchains can communicate with each other. So instead of I send Don E, he should eventually receive Bitcoin. And that's sort of like the inter-ledger tree, which would be really exciting and awesome. But one really good example of where this failed was at the L2 summit last year. There was a panel with Lightning and Heiden, and interestingly, they both use different class functions. So they can't actually, there's no standard there for them to communicate to their class. And that doesn't seem like a big failing of this entire approach. So I think standards are important when protocols need to interact with each other.
Yeah, so I thank you for bringing up Interledger because I haven't yet on this panel, and I thought I was being extremely restrained for doing so. I think the Bolt standard is a terrible standard. Like it's not a standard at all. The Bolt standard is an API. It's an interface. And so yeah, if you like implement the exact same software in 2 different languages and have the exact same interface for it, then sure. But it's entirely, completely coupled to all these weird details of Bitcoin script and Bitcoin transaction formats, and like it's sort of just a remarkable fact that this has been sort of independently implemented by a few different people, but it isn't because it's any good as a standard, as a protocol, as something that you'd want sort of 2 different things to talk to each other using. It's really like, basically it's re-implementations of the same thing. What's sort of nice about a standard like the Interledger protocol is that it takes sort of just the bare minimum of actual sort of common functionality between these 2 things. In Bitcoin, you literally assume that the person you have a channel with is Bitcoin channel, right? That it's a Bitcoin payment channel. And so to do it with like even like something as just a tiny tweak like Lightning requires sort of a tiny tweak like Litecoin requires breaking the standard and sort of doing something that's sort of adapting it in particular ways. And yeah, absolutely. Like the fact that it depends on hash functionality.
One comment there. I think it's always popped up the Bitcoin world because the transaction model, the transaction and the state are intertwined. So in that design, the protocol they always get confused and put that in there. I agree. They didn't have the exact same Bitcoin privilege is.
Yes, but no. It's not just that. the other factors that they, and I do this all the time, but they intertwine the sort of the HTLC part of the Lightning channel, of the multi-hop payment part, with the state channel part. And if they didn't do that, it would actually be much cleaner and more in layer protocol. But I don't want to rant on that.
But to be clear on the interledger standardization argument, like I've been part of the interledger standardization effort the last 4 months, and it's no matter what you do, there's no way to escape people that just want to put their back-shaded argument in it. And what's happening right now is, for example, with the Rust implementation of Interledger, is that, okay, we're not gonna wait for everybody to agree on everything, we're just gonna do it. And it is what it is. If people don't wanna wait on the standards, if people want to wait on the standards, sure. But eventually everybody's going to be using one implementation of it. So what are you gonna do?
That's actually exactly right into the issue. So when people ask why did Ryan use different class functions, they previously said we don't want to be halt or stalled by other projects.
Yes.
So we just went there and stopped.
You know, I've literally been in hours of calls where you hear somebody speak and there's nothing out of the discussion. Somebody else, as Jeff said, somebody else comes one day and says, let's build this new interledger stack, which it might be actually better in some components, but it ignores years of work on how specific components were done. And you will eventually you will get all the technical debt that you don't have right now, you will get in a few years, inevitably. You have something.
We're all ragging on Bitcoin here, so I'll rag on Ethereum as a standard failure. The failure to reuse some of the basic work done around addresses on Bitcoin, having built-in checksums and things like that we had clear standards for that were literally directly interoperable with the specific curves that we were using, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Honestly, that set back usability by years, and we had this notion that it's just gonna be a couple months until we get ENS up and working. Now we finally do have ENS, so to be clear, the way to remedy this issue is now go freaking put ENS on everything, because that is what you should do, and that is better than the old Bitcoin standard. But look at how many years it took us to get here. How many years we've been languishing in all kinds of bad, typoed addresses and things like this. That was already a solved problem that Bitcoin had already taken care of, and we didn't port over that work. We could have ported over that work and then still started working on ENS, and it would have been about the same amount of time, I suspect, to get us on ENS as it's taken. But then in the intermediate, we would have had significantly improved user experience, better interoperability between wallets, ability to reuse libraries, blah, 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 blah.
Or multi-sig.
I know you guys want to ask more questions. I personally want to do it, but I guess everyone, including the panelists, are all tired and hungry. So let's just finish it for now and get some food and ask more questions to them directly in the networking session. Is that all right? Okay.
Thank you, sir.